New Orleans cemeteries are known throughout the world for their beauty and their rich history. But they're not just for tourists and filmmakers. For many local residents, cemeteries where we honor our deceased loved ones, they're part of our neighborhoods and they're part of the fabric of the city. But caring for these beautiful historic tombs can be a daunting process. So we're delighted to be joined today by Jason Church with the National Park Service. I'm also delighted to be joined by my colleague at the Historic New Orleans Collection, Jari Honore. Together, they're going to be sharing best practices for caring for these beautiful tombs. Lastly, I'd like to thank our sponsor for this program, Lake Lawn Metairie Funeral Home and Cemetery. Thank you so much for your generous support of this program, and everyone, enjoy.
I'm Jari Honore, a reference associate in the Williams Research Center of the Historic New Orleans Collection, also a local historian and genealogist and 12th generation Louisianian. And I'm here today with
Jason Church. I'm the Chief of Technical Services at the National Center for Preservation Technology and Training. We are a research and training office of the National Park Service. And they brought me in today because my specialties is the preservation of historic cemeteries. We're here today to talk about the care of these tombs, ironwork, landscape, to answer questions that you might have about the care of family tombs.
And so, Jason, as we look around this historic cemetery this afternoon, we see a lot of disrepair. What are some of the contributing factors to the state of the cemetery?
A lot of it's neglect. So the family's not coming back and caring for the tombs themselves. A lot of that can be helped with preventative maintenance. So keeping up, cleaning, reapplying lime wash, keeping the plants from growing in them. A lot of preventive maintenance can go a long way. Of course, we have issues in New Orleans with storm damage, things like that. But a lot of what we see is demolition by neglect.
So Jason, we're situated here in beautiful St. Louis Cemetery number 2, of all places with the Interstate 10 behind us and Canal Street just 1 block away. Founded in August of 1823, the second oldest of the cemeteries under the care of the New Orleans Archdiocesan Cemeteries. And sadly, this cemetery is not open to the public at present. The St. Louis Cemetery 1 and 2 are closed to the general public because of the condition issues that they face.
So it is sad that they're closed. Of course, if a family comes and wants to work on their tomb or visit the tomb, they can contact the diocese. They'll let them in. But we're really hoping that families will start taking a little bit more care and bringing these tombs back, and eventually we can reopen it. So hopefully families and concerned citizens and groups will adopt some of the tombs, will come in and work on the family so that we can reopen these, just these jewels of New Orleans to the public.
In many cases, families have limited budgets in order to undertake these projects. What would you say are some of those critical steps that they should take first, conscious of their budgetary restrictions?
If you have a limited budget, the most important is the masonry sound? Does it need to be repointed? Do you have sections that need to be relayed? That's really calling in a preservation mason to do some patchwork to help extend the life of the tomb is the most important. Another really important thing is the marble with the genealogical information on, is that in one piece? If not, that's something I would bring in a conservator to repair. Those have a tendency to walk away. Tourists, vandals, people like that, and all of a sudden now you're losing your family history. That I would put at a higher priority to get that conserved, get that one reapplied to the tomb. But then definitely making sure, just like your house, the foundation's good, the walls are sound. Cosmetics we can worry about later. Really bring in a mason to repoint or do patchwork to keep it sound as the most important thing.
And so for those families who are interested in taking some of the preventive care steps on their own, what are the products that they can use?
One of the things I do caution is there's a lot of companies that sell tomb paint. Be careful that that's not just watered down latex paint, which is not good for our masonry. That causes a waterproof barrier that doesn't allow the masonry to breathe any longer. So we never want to use any waterproofing agents out here in the cemetery. The reality is most of the moisture coming into these is not coming from rain, it's actually coming from rising damp. So once the rain goes down or even the dew cycles, that moisture gets absorbed up through the ground. Once it gets behind the stone, if you put a waterproofer on, it can't get out. It's actually going to cause deterioration further. What we want to do is use actual lime wash. So historically, lime wash still allows moisture to move through the masonry. That's a good thing. And it actually is self-healing and actually protects the masonry. Now you can mix this yourself by buying lime mortars and adding water to it. We have a video on how to mix this and how to properly apply that on our website. Another thing is you can order pre-mixed lime washes online, ask your local cemetery if they have them available. But there's a lot of companies online where you can buy pre-mixed lime washes that are ready to go. So one of the things that we can do as tomb owners that's the most gratifying, makes the biggest visual impact, is to keep our tombs clean. Now, historically, we would come around, All Saints Day or once a year and clean the tombs. So there's a lot of wrong ways to clean and there's some right ways to clean. One of the things that we want to stay away from is using any bleach, any household cleaners, any muriatic acid or sulfuric acid. All of these things will deteriorate our stone, especially marble, which is super acid sensitive. Another thing that we want to avoid is pressure washing. Pressure washing is easy to do, people love it. It's not good for our historic material. So this tomb is a good example. This one's been pressure washed recently in the past. So we've got all these swirl marks all over it where it was been pressure washed. But more importantly than the scarring and the unsightly look of our swirl marks is if we really stop and look at this stone, this marble is super deteriorated. It's very sugar, it's very fragile. A pressure washer is really, really gonna expedite this deterioration. It's really gonna blow apart this marble. So in reality, using a pressure washer to make this tomb look bright and shiny is gonna do maybe 50, 75 years worth of natural erosion in seconds. So it's really not worth it. We wanna stop, really evaluate, is our cleaning worth the kind of damage we're doing to this tomb? And the answer is no. So we talked about what not to use. So no bleach, no household cleaners, no acid. What we're going to use today is a product called D2. It's a biocidal cleaner. So it has a detergent, so you'll see it suds up. It also has a biocide in it that will kill this biological growth. The first thing we do, this is just water. We're just getting our marble wet here. So we've got our surface wet. Now we're going to use our cleaner. Again, we're using a product called D2. It's a biocide. There are other biocidal cleaners out there. This is the one we recommend. Doesn't have to just be on stone. This can treat biogrowth on anything. Stone, masonry, concrete, metal. It won't harm any of it. It's safe on any of that, on wood as well. Now we're gonna let it dwell for a little bit. We're gonna let it sit on there and do its thing. So one thing with any time you have a biocidal cleaner, you may see your marble change colors. Any masonry that has biological growth, it's the biological growth itself. Some of it produces a chemical, could turn red or yellow or orange. That's okay. That's actually that chemical coming out of the stone when it's killing that biological growth. It's gonna rinse right away. We don't have to worry about it. So we've got our soft bristle brushes here in a bucket with just water. And then the rest is all elbow grease. So we've sprayed with our cleaner, let it sit a minute, we scrubbed it, we rinsed it off. Now for the purpose of this short video, I've only treated this small panel. In real life, I would clean this entire tomb. A lot of times people want to clean just the epitaph or just the genealogical information. We want to clean the whole tomb. Now, one of the things with a biocide is we got done, looks okay. Most people's first reaction is, let me re-clean this. Don't. You put your cleaner on, it did its thing. We scrubbed it, we removed all that loose soiling. What we have on here is a complex system of biogrowth. We've taken our brush and we've removed the top of that biogrowth. But the reason this is so dark is that biogrowth had root system. That root system is all down in our crystalline structure of our stone. We have applied a biocide, we've killed it. We're gonna leave it alone. Over the next week or two or even month, this is gonna continue to get lighter and lighter. Now, that is not the stone changing color. That is all of the root system of that biological growth pulling back and falling off. And what you're gonna get left with is a much cleaner surface where all that root system and all that biological growth is gone. So one of the things with a biocidal cleaner, we don't have to clean as often because the biocide, when it killed that biological growth, is gonna keep the biological growth coming back. Now, how long that takes totally depends on how porous your stone is. Are you in shade all the time? Do you have sun? It could be 6 months, it could be 3 or 4 years before you start to see biological growth again and need to re-clean. One of the things everyone thinks about New Orleans, of course, is the tombs. World famous for the tombs, but we don't want to forget the ever important ironwork. New Orleans has a great history and heritage of amazing metalwork. We don't want to neglect that or overlook it. Now, there's a lot of things as tomb owners that we can do to care for this ironwork. It's very easy. So this is a great example. We've got a beautiful working gate. We have nice wrought iron elements, pieces here, nice scroll work, cast iron columns, cast iron posts, and we have surface rust on it, but that's really all. There's really no repair work that needs to be done to this. So what we would recommend is covering up all of our stone, our marble, to keep the work that we're gonna do on the ironwork from impacting it. So we could lay tarps over marble here and against our tomb. We would want to come in and wire brush this by hand to remove just any of the loose soiling, dirt, corrosion from it. Wash it down, just regular water works fine. After we've cleaned the surface rust off, we can also treat it with a rust converter. Now, a rust converter is a chemical that will turn our iron oxide into a more stable form, iron tannate. That iron tannate will help preserve this for a longer time. Then we would come in, we would prime it, and then we would paint it. Now, historically, most of this ironwork is probably black. We would sort of take a good eye when we're cleaning to see if we saw any other colors. But typically, a lot of this was painted black, flat black. Gloss black is a much more modern paint. So we would come back with a black semi-gloss or flat black, prime it a couple coats of finish. It's good for another 50 years.
Tell us a little something about vegetation and how families can do preventative care in terms of vegetation.
Oh, that's a great thing that families can do themselves. As these plants are allowed to continue to grow, some of them look like a tiny little plant now. There's a few that I've seen in here that have whole trees coming out of the top of them. That plant gets bigger. The roots of that plant really get into the masonry, really get into the mortar joints, and really help deteriorate and break that down. But once we get those plants off, that's when we really want to repoint that brick, maybe patch that stucco to keep those plants from coming back year after year. We get a lot of damage over the years from our volunteer plants that come in. So we have lots of cracks and crevices, places that mortars come out, places that stucco's loose. This is a really great place to hold moisture, hold water. Because of that, we get plant growth. Now, the roots of these plants will go in, they'll tear away at the mortar. Some of the plants can actually start to digest the limes of the mortar. All of this is helping to weaken the tomb. So this is something that we can definitely take care of our own tombs with to remove this plant growth. And that's gonna help extend the life of our tomb. But there's good ways to do it and bad ways to do it. So one of the first things that we don't wanna do is just to come in here and start yanking our plants out. Those roots are really into that mortar. It's gonna help pull that mortar out. So we wanna avoid that. The other thing we don't wanna do is to come in and just start spraying an herbicide on it. So most herbicides work by actually thirsting the plant to death. So the herbicides are very heavy and rich in salts. Now, salt's a really bad thing for our historic masonry. Both historic marble, historic brick, historic stucco, all of these things, salt is detrimental to them. It'll cause sugaring. We'll talk a little bit more about what sugaring looks like But that's one of the main causes of sugaring and deterioration of this stone is by applying an herbicide. So I want to show you today a better way to do it. So one thing we don't want to come in and to start clipping all these plants, because we really need these leaves for the herbicide to work. So we'll not need these today. So what we can do is take something like our Roundup, and we just want to come in and apply it to our plants, but we want to try to keep the herbicide off of our masonry. We could put some cardboard down, some plastic down, an cheap plastic cutting board works really well. But we want to put our herbicide right on these nice green leaves, because these plants, especially if it's on a dry day like today, plants are really going to soak it up. They're going to be really happy. Unfortunately, that's also going to kill them. We could also get a small sprayer. Like I said, shield off our masonry and spray the plant as well. So we've got our ferns here on the front. We've come back after about a week or two. They've really withered up. And then we're going to come in. Now we can pull them. So we can pull those out. It brings the roots with them. We can use something like a bamboo skewer to help it out. But these roots have died, comes out very easily, and doesn't bring our masonry with it. All right, so we just talked a little bit about herbicides and how those cause sugaring. This tomb's a good example. So we can see lots of plant growth in all of our broken mortar joints and around our brick here. You can see we had some pretty good sized plants that have now died. Herbicide was used on this tomb, and we can see how much damage has been done to this piece of marble. So we have this marble and all around the edge where it was more exposed to herbicide from the plants growing. We have lots of sugaring, cracking, pieces flaking off. But if you look down below, no real plant growth, nice tight mortar joints, herbicide wasn't used, nice clean marble, nice clean joints around it, no real deterioration to this marble, as opposed to the one right above it where we know lots of plants and herbicide has been used. So let's talk a little bit about what is sugaring. What are we seeing going on here? So all masonry is susceptible to this, even concrete. So when a herbicide is applied to our masonry, it's very salt rich. Those salts absorb into our masonry. Our sun comes out, it evaporates the water and the moisture that was in there. What gets left behind is our salt crystal. As those salt crystals grow, the pressure of those actually pushes that calcite crystal and the calcium carbonate apart, causing sugaring. We call it that because as you touch the marble, what gets left behind looks like grains of sugar. It's actually the marble coming apart. Now, unfortunately, once this has been done, we're never going to come back to it. We can't all of a sudden replace these sections of marble. We can slow down the damage. One would be to rinse it really thoroughly to get all of those salts out. We could use chemical consolidants to help strengthen the bonds of those calcite crystals. Chemical consolidants can be done by a professional. They can be done by the tomb owner, but these are very expensive.
In many cases, there are tombs that are situated on a slope or otherwise have the retention of water. And we know that moisture is our enemy in terms of tomb conservation. What steps can families take in cases like that?
Yeah, so definitely if your tomb's in an area that's retaining a lot of water, you're gonna have foundation issues, you're gonna have a lot of rising damp issues. That's something I would bring to the attention of the cemetery to look at, what can be done about that. Another thing, just like our house, if we have roof damage, that's going to bring a lot of moisture in. It's going to cause further damage. A lot of the tombs around here, the top looks like a lawn. We really want to remove those plants. And once that's done, we really want to repoint the mortar joints on that roof to keep those plants from coming back and to help keep that water out of the inside of our tomb. So that's a high priority to try to bring in a preservation mason to do some repointing for you. So this tomb is a great example. We're at a very pivotal moment, still in great condition, but it's time to call in a professional. When you have broken stone on tombs, we're starting to have stucco loss, mortar loss. Because of that mortar loss, we have lots of plants growing. Really time to get this patched up before the deterioration moves along. This is time to call in a professional mason. If you're hiring a professional mason, Talk to them, ask them to see other tombs they've worked on or other properties they've worked on. Ask the cemetery if there's people they recommend. There is definitely some fantastic historic preservation masons in the New Orleans area. And what you're looking for is someone who understands that modern materials don't mix well with historic materials. So you're looking for a mason that is used to working with lime washes, and that understands that the historic material is what's needed to work with the historic masonry.
And so once the tombs have been restored, in order to maintain them, perpetual care is an option that's offered by many cemeteries. Is that right?
Oh, absolutely. And that's something I would definitely look into. If you've put in the effort to restore the tomb, we don't want to turn our back on it. That's something I would say at least once a year you need to check on it, maybe reapply lime wash, maybe clean it. But a great option would be to talk to the cemetery to see if you can get into a perpetual care agreement now that your tomb is up and conserved.
Jari, Jason, thank y'all so much for that presentation. That was really wonderful. So if anybody has follow-up questions now about the care of family tombs, what would you recommend? Where can they go to find more information?
Well, they can definitely check out our website. You can Google NCPTT, and also in the show notes. But definitely check out our website. We have videos on care and cleaning, fences, you name it.
And Jari, if somebody's looking to research their family tomb to see who's in there or to see if they even have one, where would you tell them to go?
They can consult the cemeteries database that's available on the website of the Historic New Orleans Collection, hnoc.org, or the New Orleans Catholic Cemeteries website, which has its own burial search feature.
Perfect. All right. Well, thank y'all both so much. That was great.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Thank you.